Here's a blast from the past for you. Yeah. Look, I know I said last time that the next video would be something blue and Russian, and that Cube World is only somewhat blue and not at all Russian, but this unexpected opportunity presented itself. As consolation, here's a bear. You're basically getting the full Russian experience right here. Anyway, yeah. If you're the sort to watch my videos, you probably already know what this is. Chances are you played it yourself or watched someone play it back when it was launched. That or you saw the recent RoboCast video that I swear I did not rip off, it's just a coincidence. But if you're somehow still entirely out of the loop, here's the basic rundown to the extent that most are familiar with it. It's 2013 and Minecraft, among other cube-based games, is all the rage. There are plenty of outright rip-offs around this time, most of which don't try anything new. Of course, there are also other Cubic games releasing, most of which had nothing to do with Minecraft, and many of them also get attention by proxy. Cube World, an action RPG whose development started in 2011, was one of those games. The two developers released a very promising paid alpha on their website at a $20 price point, released a couple of bug fixes, and vanished off the face of the earth, leaving Cube World unfinished and giving no information about its development save for a few sparse Twitter updates, leading many to see the whole thing as a con, with the devs taking the money and running. Now, not all of that is necessarily true, but that's what the public thinks. We'll get back to that. Anyway, I bought the game back when it was first available, and I can still access my account, which means that for the first time I have an opportunity to talk about a game that is well somewhat cared about and that few others can actually discuss. Sure, any random schmuck can look at the history and go over all that, but I can actually talk about the game. So, was Cube World really all that it was hyped up to be, and did it have the potential to be good? And just what did happen with the development? Well, it's time to find out. First of all, we need to make a character. The creator is pretty robust, and you can pick from 7 races, but let's be real here, only one matters. I'll make Conqueror's here a rogue, because of course I will. And we're in! First things first, gotta sold some plants. And reach a town, should probably get around to that. On the way I was chased by some chickens that I had no chance of beating. Then I get chased by some elves that I had no chance of beating. This may become a theme. There's not much to do in town, seeing as I'm poor, so let's just head back out into the wilderness and see the landscape some more. The world design in Cube World is pretty nice. Everything is voxel based, obviously, but there's enough variety and color to make it feel fresh. You got mountains, caves, lakes, rivers, temples, castles, Mother 3, tundras, you name it. It's all procedural, but it's still nice to look at. You can even get abilities that let you explore the world more efficiently, like hang gliding, which is essential, and sailing, which is borderline worthless most of the time. I really liked this valley I found that exclusively contained vegetable-based enemies. That said, exploration can be pretty dangerous at times, but I'm in a low-level area, so I'm sure it'll be fine. Or not. Look, I'm in such a good mood right now. We need to keep not talking about the combat. What else is there? Pets. We can talk about pets. There are 53 non-humanoid animals and monsters in Cube World, and all of them can be tamed as pets. You buy or loot some pet food, find the creature that corresponds to the food you have, feed them it, and you'll get a new pet buddy. These pets will follow you around, help you in combat, provide better transport, level alongside you, and do whatever else one would expect a pet to do. Only one can be active at a time, but they respawn and you can store plenty of them. I am asexually reproducing frog Noah, and this inventory is my arc. Overall, the pet system is a great side activity to spice up the game's exploration. There's also basic crafting in the game, and thankfully it's nothing too complicated. You can make food, prepare materials, and create new gear using various objects in towns and in the field like campfires, anvils, and looms, and some things can be made by hand. This is all well and good, but the downside is I have to make everything one at a time. Very slowly. The game also has some pretty nice weapon customization, allowing you to use your materials to increase the effectiveness of what you've got instead of having to get entirely new gear. You do so by adding more blocks to your weapon, which is extremely neat because it visually changes how it looks. It doesn't care where you place those blocks either. Yep. What else can I talk about? This is unfortunate. I think I have to bring the combat in now. Look, the combat in Cube World isn't bad. Okay, it's kinda bad, but it's not terrible. The best way I can describe it is, well, you know those knockoff Korean FPSs that try really hard to be Counter-Strike or whatever, but are very clearly cheaper feeling? Cube World is like that, except instead of being an FPS that wants to be Counter-Strike, it's an MMO-light RPG that wants to be Dark Souls. It's not Dark Souls. Sorry guys. It has the rolling and dodgeable attacks, and it feels pretty snappy at first, but it's not Dark Souls. And that's because the enemy scaling is a mess. This is a boss orc. Its name is Blue. That means that, according to the game, this should be an easy enemy. I'm level 3, but this guy is pretty close to where I started, so that sounds reasonable. Let's see what happens if I try to attack it. Did you see the health bar go down? I didn't see the health bar go down. My special attacks are a little better, but that's like saying a paper cut's a little better than a light breeze at taking out an M1 Abrams. Okay, here's a Cormling. Its name is Orange. If that last guy was considered an easy boss and would have taken like an hour to kill, surely this guy must be a fair challenge. Okay, yeah, cool. 6 seconds. So in this area, the boss enemies can't have a dent put in them, while normal enemies are a cakewalk. That's reasonable. But then if you walk north for 5 minutes, this is happening. I get that not every game needs to have enemies scale to your level, and that there are places that you're just not supposed to reach until you've progressed further in the game. But those are also supposed to be distinct areas! But it gets even worse, because it turns out those bosses really were taking their Flintstones vitamins, because no matter how much I leveled, and regardless of how much damage they were doing to me, the bosses always had absurd amounts of health. Eventually, it just gets to the point where their damage output is so negligible you may as well just not even bother dodging unless it's to trigger the double damage bonus for rogues, since that'd likely kill off your combo and make the fight even longer. It's not like you're in danger or something. Really, it wouldn't be so bad if it got loot faster, and oh ho ho, don't get me started on the loot system. In this game, you get roughly equal loot for all 4 classes regardless of which one you're playing. That might be at least acceptable, maybe, if you were playing with friends, but in practice, it essentially cuts the amount of loot that you actually get to use down to a quarter of it would be if you could use all of it. Add that on top of the borderline nonsensical power level system that replaces the traditional level-based loot limitation that most RPGs use with one that sort of caps based on level and equipped gear, I think? I'm not entirely sure how this works or why anyone thought it was a good idea, to be honest with you, and at the end of the day, all of that combined makes progression slow to an agonizing crawl very early on, and it stays that way. So we have obnoxiously beefy enemies, a bad progression system, and combat that's often unfair, boring, or both. So how else can we hamper the game's best aspect, the exploration, even more? Oh, that's right, nighttime! Nighttime in Cube World does not mess around. When it's dark, it's dark. You can't see anything at all. Thankfully, you have your trusty iron lamp which lets you see everything that's within 6 inches of you. You may be asking why I don't just go get the legendary lamp that's brighter than the surface of the sun, and the reason for that is that I wanted to play the game properly without using a seed that has one immediately available. The only way to get them is to find them for sale in towns where they have a small chance of being sold in item shops, but there's only ever 1 town per region to my knowledge, and those regions are huge. The result is that in my entire playthrough I only ever visited a total of 3 towns, and none of them sold legendary lamps, so I was stuck with this the whole game. Remember, you can only get the iron lamp and the legendary lamp. There's no middle ground. The other options for passing the night are sleeping in a bed or visiting an inn. Inns are only in towns, which again are very scarce, and beds, while present at most of the many campfires around the wilderness, still don't speed up time enough to make it much less annoying. Now, I'm just about done playing Cube World. There really isn't that much content, but before we set off, I'd like to have a look at the class system. The classes all use MP for special attacks, which is normally gained by attacking things. Gotta attack things to attack more things, after all. Each class has 2 specializations, which are kinda like a subclass, but matter less. They tweak how a class works in some of its attacks to lean towards a certain playstyle, but they aren't completely transformative. For example, rogues can pick between being assassin or being a ninja. I picked to be a ninja, which is generally more effective for fighting groups. Anyway, for the sake of experimentation, I went ahead and made a character for each of the other classes just to see how they play in a single player setting. Warriors are your blocky, pummely sorts of guys. They mostly attack with large, comedically slow weapons and can fall under berserkers or guardians. The former is really the only viable choice for single player, seeing as there's not much to defend. Honestly, the class is kind of impractical unless you're playing in a group, since your attacks are often too slow to let you dodge any attacks happening in the same millennium as yours, causing you to soak up way more damage than a rogue would. The higher health doesn't compensate much either. Rangers are your archers. The sniper specialization is for people who like killing things effectively but don't like action, while scouts are for people who liked playing as sniper but wish it was worse. Mages are exactly what you would expect a mage to be. Unlike other classes, they regenerate MP over time, then use to cast spells. Fire mages are all about attacking, while water mages work support, as helpful as that is in single player. But regardless of which class you are, you're not going anywhere. They're probably very helpful in multiplayer. In single player, at least early on, they are worthless. Sorry, mage fans. I guess that's it for the game. I've got mixed feelings about it. While the exploration and world was fantastic, there are a lot of gameplay issues, but they're all ones that could probably be easily fixed with an update. What happened with the game's development anyway? Well, I already told you what people believe the full story is, so let's keep digging. From what I gathered, the devs didn't actually intend on releasing the alpha, but decided to after high demand from those following the game's development. Shortly after the alpha launched, the shop was taken out by a DDoS attack and has remained closed ever since to be reopened as soon as possible after the next Cube World update. For me, this rules out that this is an out-and-out scam. There's not much of a point in limiting the amount of money you can scam people out of, seeing as the developers have not in fact updated the game for literally half a decade. Speaking of updates, there hasn't been a whole lot of information about what's being added at all, but we do know some of what's theoretically coming from updates posted all over the internet with no particular order. Apparently in the last 5 years, the game has been entirely rewritten for 64-bit support, and given quests, an entirely new leveling system, more environmental variety, better enemy balancing, more city variants, even nicer looking world design, factions, fast traveling. I'm gonna be honest, it sounds like all of my major complaints have been remedied. But why has it taken so long, and why can't we play it right now? As it would turn out, the two developers, Wolfram and Sarah Von Funk, that's a great last name, have been preoccupied having a kid and actual jobs. Fair enough, I suppose. Still, it doesn't really explain why, even after all of these things have been added to the game, an update hasn't been pushed. And to be entirely blunt, I still don't know! There's definitely some reason, but have you ever seen this happen before? A game that was effectively in early access selling itself for doing a 180 and exiting early access while still being worked on. There have been cases where a game stopped being sold because development ceased, sure, but I can't say I've ever seen a situation where the game keeps being worked on anyway. The way I see it, the developers changed their mind about having an entirely public development cycle and took the opportunity from the DDoS attack to bail out, but that could be entirely wrong. We're all just very confused. Oh, and by the way, despite what RoboCat's admittedly quite good video would tell you, it hasn't been complete radio silence from the game's creator since July 2017. Any and all information about it is being compiled in the unofficial r/Cube World's official Discord server. It's, well, it sure is something. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Cube World. It's been a trip, to say the least. See you next time when I play another voxel-based game. No cubes, though.